Right? How y'all doing? I want to have a little chat with you about UVC, UVC devices, what it is like, and why I think it's cool, and why I think you should think it's cool. So, UVC is USB video class. It's a driver. It's a universal cross-platform driver that works with, well, video devices. I'm using a bunch of them right now, so I'm going to flick between things just so you can kind of get a groove. But the idea being that instead of having random proprietary drivers to make a video device work, web camera, capture cards, whatever, you have one driver, and then all the manufacturer has to worry about is the firmware that goes on the device. So, if you have a UVC compliant device, like a webcam, webcams are like the most popular UVC devices out there, you can go, right, well, I'm on Windows, plug it in, and then the UVC driver goes, hey, that's a device I can grab video from. And then you get some, like, I don't know, generic sliders in some software to say, hey, what do you want to do? So generic software would be, like, whatever you choose, but, like, OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, uses UVC. You can, because it's just a generic video driver. It will just see, it's a system-wide driver. It will just see the device and go, hey, do you want to tweak some, like, there's some settings available here. Do you want to tweak some? You know, it's really neat. So you're on Windows, you plug it in. Oh, look, camera, cool, catch video. You're on Mac, you plug it in. Oh, mate, camera, cool. You go onto Linux, you plug it in. Oh, wow, it's a camera, cool. You know, same settings across the board because devices, or for the most part, it's not always the exact same settings, but you get the general kind of, you get the gist of it. You get the meat of the settings. What about I've got an Android phone. Android has a UVC driver in it. Bam! Plug in that webcam. Hey, look, a camera. Or your smart TV if it's Android based. I don't know about all of them, but Android based TVs, plug it in. Wait, look, you got a camera. I can use that. Or I don't know about iPhone, but I know that Apple has had a UVC driver on their devices for donkeys now, 10 point something. You know, Windows has got it, as I said. Most devices have a UVC driver, which is why this is so cool. Because people don't, you know, you're not going to know that by looking at me, but I like video. I really like video. I've been messing around with audio and video since I was a wee spud, capturing video with tape decks, VCRs, you know, just capturing like gameplay or home videos, using like camcorders with big old tapes, or you know, or even just like little DV tapes, or recording to memory cards, flash-based camcorders, all the way to, like, you know, buying capture cards that people tend to use today for whatever reason, or even big boy video devices from the really expensive stuff just for, because why not? You know, just for, well, everything really. If you can plug a device in it, I want to play with it and see how it works and break it. And at a time, there was a time years and years and years ago where I actually did beta firmware testing for a company to see how I could kind of ruin their devices. You know, what happens if I give it this weird signal? Does it take it, or does it freak out? Is there a way that we can kind of tweak some things to make this? It was really fun, really fun. But I've played with really cheap devices, you know, analog capture cards, all the way up to really expensive stuff. I've played with things with really dodgy drivers on the really cheap end to really good drivers on the cheap end. I've played with high-end should be amazing stuff as well, with proprietary drivers that have crippled the devices. So, you know, it doesn't matter what you pay. It's always been a bit of a well, bit of a shit show, really. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. sometimes a good device gets a driver update and it would flake, and so that's why I think UVC is really cool, because it's something that's now becoming more and more and more adopted, even though it's been around for eons. Absolutely ages. Like, I'm thinking, like, earlier than PlayStation 3. So we're talking a long old time ago. You know, the idea that I can plug a web camera now, as I say, web cameras are your number one kind of UVC device. You can plug a web camera into your Xbox, and your Xbox says webcam. Like I said, TVs and phones and all this will see a camera, and that is cool. UVC compliance is a good thing, and more devices are ditching their proprietary drivers and going to UVC. Now, I've been ranting on now for about 7 minutes. What I wanted to get to is, by the way, if you want a universal capture card by a named brand with inputs and outputs on it, HDMI input and a pass-through to a TV or whatever for, I don't know, gameplay, capturing a big old camera like what I'm doing now, or whatever, the Elgato HD60S Plus works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. I often see people go, why don't I just buy the Elgato Cam Link? Because that's UVC compliant. That was one of their first UVC compliant devices. But then it only has one HDMI port, so then they have to buy a splitter so that they can get video into the device and out to like a TV or whatever if they are doing. Most common thing people use these things for right now are games capture, streaming, all that kind of stuff. It's messy. You don't need to. You can buy an actual capture card with input-output. So I'm going to go through some of the bits that I like, from the really cheap to kind of expensive. Not super expensive. I don't have any of the super expensive gear here at the moment, but just to kind of give you a taster of the different things on the market. So this is going to be a bit wobbly because I'm using different cameras. I'm not really going to grab another camera and start syncing up. I'm just going to grab a web camera and start pointing it at things and talk to you about stuff. But right, first off, right now, right here, we're using a Panasonic GH5. It's a beast of a camera, and it's overkill for what I need. I'm on Linux right now. Actually, I will show you. This is my Linux desktop. Just so you can see, this is Manjaro with GNOME as my desktop environment. And I'll tell you what, I'll even pull in OBS just to prove a point. So I said that the Elgato works. I can't show you it working directly, but if you go to console game capture right here, I've got console gameplay right here and console audio. I click here, and there you see the game capture HD60S Plus. If you go for any of the other ones, like the HD60S, or just the HD60, they will not work as they are. Well, they require a proprietary driver, and I'm going to be honest with you, the drivers on those devices sucked balls. I have them, I've tested them, they suck. The 60S Plus is the first one, realistically, with a decent driver. Actually, you know what, for the lols, give me a second to hook up a Nintendo Switch, and you can see the magic happen. Ready? Just so you know, I'm not fibbing to you. Here's the Switch. You've already seen the thing with all the stuff connected to it, but here you go. Cable, Switch. Yeah, that should go black. And there you have it. Nintendo Switch being captured. Although I don't have a control pad to be able to go off that screen, but please trust me, that's actually working. I'll unplug the Switch now. Oh look, there you go, it's gone black. If you need a brand name capture card, there you go. I've used cheaper, jankier ones with input-output on them, but issues depending on what USB chipset your motherboard's got. But that's going into a completely other thing. So, fluff. As I say, this is a Panasonic GH5. This is going through another Elgato product, the Cam Link, which I've already mentioned. I can't show you the Cam Link. It's just in the dark. It's under my desk. But this is what a very expensive camera going into a Cam Link on Linux will do for you. Although not very well lit, admittedly, but it's here. Then I have this option. Next step down, Logitech Brio. It's a 4K camera. However, on my Linux rig, it doesn't give me access to the 4K-ness or the 60 frames a second that this thing normally would offer. If you're on Windows, works great. I think if you're on Mac, it will also work great. But on Linux, I only get access to 1080p 30. But it looks all right. I think it's all right. And then if you want to go to the uber budget area, down here, this wee beastie here is a Logitech, what is it, C920 web camera. So depending on how much you want to spend, quality-wise, I think this goes for anywhere between 50 to 100. The Brio goes for upwards of 200. And the GH5 with the Cam Link, you're talking anywhere between like $1,000, $2,000, I think. You know, pick where you feel your needs sit. If you're just making videos on YouTube, any of these things will do. If you're just making videos for the internet in general, any of these will do. Video calls, again, any of these will do. If you're live streaming, you do not need a $2,000 camera. Just saying. Now I'm going to be using the Logitech to show you some different capture cards. And so I'm just going to point them down this way and yeah, okay? So we'll go from, we'll go cheap, really, really cheap, just to show, because now you don't have to worry so much about spending a lot of time developing a proprietary firmware, and that firmware is only going to work on, say, Windows or whatever. Work on your firmware rather than your driver. Use the universal driver. You support everything right out of the box. So it's made things really, really cheap. So check these out. This is the cheapest UVC capture card I have ever owned. I think it's USB 2, like capture cards of old. Like, I don't know, the Hauppauge HD PVR that was like a component capture card. Early AVerMedia cards, WinTV stuff, you know, early Elgato cards, all the way up to like the HD60 and stuff, was USB 2. USB 2 is enough to spit out 720/60 or 1080/30. This is a really, really cheap kind of Cam Link style device. USB in, and a single HDMI port for plugging in your cameras or whatever. As I say, 720/60, I think 1080/30, costs anywhere between £10 and £15 on Amazon. If you want to output to a telly, you're going to need a splitter as well, which will probably cost you another, you know, what, £10, £15. But really, really good thing to have in your bag. I have boxes of different capture cards, ranging from, you know, that I've purchased like over the years and all that. You can't have enough different capture cards, to be fair, and I think this is a really, really good one. I really like this, especially for the price, and it's UVC compliant, so it'll work on Windows, Mac, Linux, phones, you know, whatever. Next one that I really recommend, the Cloner Alliance Flint 4KP. This dealio has 2 HDMI ports on it, one in, one out, and the cool thing on this one, it also strips HDCP, which is HDMI's copy protection. A lot of people would go out and buy HDMI splitters that would strip HDCP, but this does it right out of the box. Back in the PlayStation 3 days, you had to buy something to strip HDCP because you couldn't turn it off. If you have a device that has the option to turn HDCP off, may as well just turn it off. If you don't, you'd need to strip. With PlayStation 3, you couldn't turn it off at all. So, you know, something like this would have been fantastic back then, or you'd have to run a splitter to strip. It's USB-C, and it's got audio in, out, and all that, but no one ever really uses that. It's a really nice low latency capture card. All of these are pretty low latency because they're UVC. They function just, like I said, they just function like a web camera. So really like this one. Oh, this one's a bit more expensive. I think this one goes for anywhere between 150 and 200 pounds. But it's a 1080p, 60 frames a second, even though it says 4K on it. I think it might have 4K pass-through on this one, I can't remember. But it's not a 4K capture card, but it's a really nice one. You know, they even advertise that you can use it on your phone. So, you know, that's a really good one. And I've already shown kind of that this thing actually works. It's connected up right now. The Elgato HD60S Plus. So it's a good card. You know, colors are solid, smooth frame rate. I mean, I've had the HD60, I've had the Game Capture HD, HD60, HD60S, HD60S Plus. This is the best one. The HD60, everything before the HD60 was USB 2, so it had quite a bit of latency on it. The 60S had a proprietary driver that was absolutely god awful and would cause, depending on the chipset of your USB chipset on your motherboard or whatever, it could cause hitching, stuttering, and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as they went over to UVC with this one, fantastic! It's a goodie. It's a good one. I recommend this one. Again, input, output, no need for splitters to get your output to your TV if you're trying to do console capture or whatever. Works Windows, Mac, Linux, I guess phones because it's UVC. Nice card. Quite expensive though. I think in the regions of like 150, 200 pounds. I don't know. I've had this for a while. I'm throwing that one out there. But this is your big name brand that a lot of people tend to go for. AverMedia have an equivalent to this as well in that's UVC compliant. I tend to recommend people go for the low latency stuff these days too. So basically meaning that anything you do on screen will very quickly appear on your computer monitor or the device that you're going to capture with. So once upon a time, if you were going to capture something with like a Hauppauge HD PVR, Elgato Game Capture HD, what was one of the other popular ones? Like the AverMedia Live Gamer Portable, or what was that really big one they had? I can't remember now, but they had another capture card. They generally had input lag as they were processing the video and spitting it out over USB 2. So you'd have like upwards of maybe 2+ seconds, like actual physical seconds of lag. So you do something, and then it appears on the screen. So a lot of people would buy these things thinking that they could kind of connect up their consoles or their cameras to their computers and play off of their like laptop screen or their PC screen or whatever. It didn't work like that because there was too much lag. And if you were going to stream with it, you'd either have to capture the video output from a window, a preview window, or either way you'd have to sync your audio, your voice, to the delay of the device, and that could change like every time. So you'd have to, like, you know, clap or go left right as you're moving something on screen or whatever, and then sync up your microphone to match up. If you didn't, it looked really stupid. I always recommend low latency. Webcams are low latency, UVC devices are generally low latency. Go low latency. You know, you could literally go click and within a few milliseconds have the image displayed on your screen. Very little is required to sync things up, if anything at all. I tend to find that it's such a small amount of lag that most people don't even notice, so don't worry about it too much. But yeah, UVC I think is great. I think it's really, really good. Standardizing video drivers, I don't understand why we didn't do it sooner. Because then we all get access to the same really cool toys. And as I say, I've got boxes of capture cards. I've got boxes of cameras and capture cards and all that from all different brands. As I say, ranging from the mega cheap things that we now get all the way up to kind of more expensive, somewhat professional gear from companies like Magewell. So I've used, you know, clones of those too. So I don't know, I've used the really cheap stuff from Hauppauge, stuff from Elgato, stuff from Avamedia, Magewell, clones of those, Cloner Alliance. I find as well, there's no silver bullet. There's no magic capture card that will work for absolutely everything, but I mean, come on, if you really need to get into this kind of stuff now, just want to try something out, I mean, something like this for like 10 quid, it's fantastic. I mean, if it's got HDMI, because I don't understand why a lot of people ask this, will this work if I plug in XYZ device? If it's got HDMI output, and these things have an HDMI input, yes, it will work. It's that simple. If it's got HDMI out, and the card's got HDMI in, you're golden. Don't ask the question anymore. Yes, it will work. Unless the device has copy protection on it. At which point you'd have to get a specific device or like a splitter to strip the signal. But it amazes me now how cheap these things are getting, how good they're getting, and the fact that, you know, I don't now, because I used to buy, when I started to switch to Linux years and years ago, a lot of my equipment didn't work on Linux. So I started to go out of my way to find alternatives to big name products, because they didn't. There was no support. There was no drivers or anything. Then we stumble across these magical little UVC devices. Some of them are really good, some of them are really bad. But now, years later, things are coming together. I still have a couple of capture cards in my main PC down by my leg here that don't run on Linux. It's quite sad, really. That although I think they might work on Mac, but then no, they're internal PCI cards. You don't do that with a Mac. Boy, does the new cheese grater Mac allow you to plug stuff into that? Does that, because they had the bin, and that was you don't plug cards into that. You had to get an expansion bay. Now we can play with all the same toys. It's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant to. And I have live streamed for years with the super cheap, even if I've had the really expensive. I've got a quite expensive PC next to me. I will happily sit and stream and capture video or whatever, capture video with cheap web camera, the big Panasonic behind it, you know, or that one, the web camera's there, but it doesn't matter what it is that you have. I'm going to tell you this now as well. Most devices can capture 720, 30, or 60. Just fine. And live stream it. Just fine. So, a few bits of cheap kit, cheap web camera, cheap capture card, you are good to go. You don't have to buy super expensive. I have mentioned some reasonably expensive gear, and that's not the super expensive gear. I mean, there are bits out there that are like £400-500, but, and more, to be fair, but I'd say that this is a good starting point, really, isn't it? Not quite where I want to go with that. I started rambling on a bit more, but it's just cool. And as I say, I see so many people going, well, I need to find a device that works across everything. This one seems to work across everything. Let's go for this. But then they have to buy extra bits too. You don't have to do that anymore. Just look to see if a device is UVC compliant. USB, video, blah, blah, blah. Just, it's built into everything now. Actually, I think you could probably use UVC. That would be built into Chrome OS, wouldn't it? For Chromebooks. Huh. I mean, you could use this stuff for pretty much anything. If you want to ask anything about different devices, where to start, because I've been using let's just say I've been using these things for decades. Analog, all the way up to HDMI stuff's the now. capturing standard def all the way up to 4K HDR, just give me a shout and tell me what you're trying to do, and I can recommend some bits and bobs. But these days, man, I mean, it's not an expensive... If you're getting into streaming and video capture, it's not an expensive hobby to get into anymore. At all. You can get pretty good devices now for as little as 10, 15 quid. Web cameras make a pretty good job. Let's go back to the web camera. Let's go back to the Brio. We're back on the Brio. Oh, you know what? You know what? Sod it. Let's go back to the C910. Where did I put it? It's on the floor, I think. It's down here. Oh, C920, wasn't it? Was it 20? Let me have a look. It doesn't say. It just says Logitech on it. Let's pop you over. Let's pop you there. Just prop you on a... Sit. Sit. Alright, and don't. But yeah, I mean, this is... It's good enough. You don't need to go hardcore. And if it's UVC, it'll run on opacity. So, take a crack. Go look at other devices. Shop around. Fucking amazing times we live in. Right, I'm off. I'm gonna go and do some random bits. Play with more UVC devices. Don't need proprietary anything anymore, really, do you? I'll see you with a bit of luck in the next one. Fucking rambling for 31 minutes. Good times. No sense made. But good time doing it. See you in the next one.